Okay, good afternoon, British and American culture students. Those of you who are wondering how the video lecture goes, it's like this. I'm in my office by myself, and I got my camera set up, and I have a remote control if I can remember to use it, to pause things in case I need to sneeze or restart or something. But normally I just go through the whole lecture from start to finish, whether I make mistakes or not. So it's just like watching me in the classroom. Of course, everything doesn't go perfectly. So if I make a mistake or I need to correct myself, I'm not going to edit the video. I'm just going to continue to speak to you just like normal. We had an orientation class on Friday, which most students attended. However, there was several students who emailed me afterwards saying, they weren't aware or they hadn't signed up and so on, which is pretty normal. So I'm going to just briefly remind all of you, just for the record, about the syllabus, the class orientation, what the expectations are for the class. Today is actually the day after Wednesday. Normally it'll be posted on Wednesday because I do these videos. Normally I record these videos on the weekend and post them on Wednesday, but this week there was a particular reason that I didn't, and this is because yesterday this book was published. We did our best to try and get it ready before the semester started, but it didn't work out. So yesterday it was printed and delivered, so now you should be able to go and get your copy, okay? If you got the third edition, as I said, the red one, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, except there's been corrections to certain sentences, typos, and maybe there's a couple dates that are wrong and stuff. Probably stuff that you don't really care about too much, but significantly the order of the chapters has been changed. For the purposes of the first 2 or 3 lectures, there's really no difference because there weren't any significant changes to the introduction or to chapter 1. So you're not gonna, if you have one of the older books, that's fine. But like I said, this is by far the best version. It's been changed. The first edition is useless. The second edition also should be recycled. The third edition you can get by with, but this one is definitely the best one, and it's reorganized to make it easier to read for you. So this is available in the bookstore, and I believe you can also order it from Korean bookstores, like the online ones like Aladdin or Yes24. You can also get a book that way. So this is what it looks like. As I said, it's kind of a sky blue color, and it says 4th edition on it. That's the one you want. I'll put that down for a moment. As far as this class is concerned, first of all, it's an open class. There's lots of English majors in it, and there are international students and students from other majors. It's not an English literature class. It's not a history class. However, cultural studies includes history and language and literature, of course. So as I said to you on Friday, culture is the study of everything, and culture is what human beings have used to create society. We develop culture, we develop rules, and we develop fashion and language in order to create community and society and civilization. And the overarching idea that links all of these things is called culture. So it's a very, very broad topic, which means that I can't talk about everything. I'm going to be selective, and I am a Canadian. I'm a Canadian citizen. I was raised in Canada, and I've lived I've taught in Chungnam for 15 years. So you might call me a Canadian Korean, I suppose. I do my best to include perspectives by different groups of people from different parts of the world. But I have my own education, and I have my own training, and I've done my own research. Shakespeare is my area of expertise, the 16th century in particular. So you will notice, or you may not, that the chapter about the 16th century, about the English Renaissance and the Reformation, Henry VIII, Shakespeare, Queen Elizabeth, the Armada, the English Civil War, all of those sort of significant events in the development of British history, British culture. That chapter is a little bit longer. That's simply because I know it best, and I want to explain to you why that period really was. Just like every country, cultures and regions and empires, they have their highs and lows. The Roman Empire rose and fell. The Chinese Empire rose and fell and rose again. There have been. That's the way. That's the way time goes. That's the way human, evolves. That's why that's how humanity evolves. That's why I chose the title of my textbook to be Evolution and Revolution, because sometimes these changes are slow, and in the case of a revolution, maybe fast, sudden, violent, unexpected, and disruptive. Okay, so think about what those words mean, and we don't really have time to go through the introduction in detail. So first of all, buy the textbook. It doesn't matter if you read a chapter before a lecture or you read it after. It's up to you. But I certainly think that if your English ability if you have what I would say a high level, intermediate or advanced English reading ability, then you can read the textbook first, and then when I talk, what I say will sort of seem familiar. But on the other hand, maybe if your English vocabulary and your English reading ability and your comprehension is lower, then maybe having me explain the ideas and talk about the people, the events, the symbols, the concepts in class first, and making notes and asking questions to me first, and then reading the chapter after will be more comfortable. Of course, you can read the book twice if you want. I don't know how many students are going to do that, but as I said to you before, the chapters, the book and the chapters in it are meant to give the details, right? In the lecture, I will explain what the meaning is and what you need to focus on. You don't need to read the textbook every single word and memorize every idea, but I will ask you to read certain parts. So I would like you to read the introduction. I'm not going to test a lot of it, but I think just, getting familiar with representations and symbols of British and American culture is good. We have all these stereotypes of these countries, and that's what we start with. And this class is meant, to look at British and American culture in depth, right? Because the topic is so big, we're going to have to, sort of go in depth only in at certain parts and certain things. But by the end of the class, it's it's always my hope that not only will you understand British and American culture better, but maybe you will understand how to reflect on your own culture, whether it's Bangladesh or France or Germany or Brazil or Canada, that after taking a class like this, that you can say, aha, like I can look at my own country from these perspectives, and I can see these same processes happening, and I can think critically about types of government, and I can consider whether it's trends and forces that are affecting the way my country and my area is changing, or that there's particular people that are making decisions, and these decisions are going to have effects that are going to transform the culture in my own family, my own life, and my own community. So I'm very passionate. I hope you can see that about this. I hope you're entertained by reading the book and by listening to me, and I hope there's a lot of participation. When it comes to, of course, it's not just about entertainment. There needs to be an evaluation. Just coming to class and participating, this is really doesn't require you to say anything. It just requires you to be physically present for 3 hours a week. That would include this online lecture is included. So 2 hours on Friday, and this one will be quite short. This video will be quite short, but you have to watch this, and whatever time limit I set, whether it's 30 minutes or 45 or an hour, you have to get credit by watching this video. If you miss 9 hours, that's the limit. If you miss 10 hours, then not only do you lose your participation score, but then you're ineligible to graduate this class, to complete the class. So don't miss more than 9 hours total. Otherwise, I'm not really concerned. As long as you are doing your quizzes, doing your assignments, and you attend the midterm and you attend the exam. As I explained on Friday, there's 4 quizzes. It doesn't perfectly work out to 25%, but it's about 6% each quiz. There's 15 questions. We do 2 quizzes before the midterm and 2 quizzes after. 1 assignment, so 2 quizzes and an assignment before the midterm, and most of that will be about American culture. And then after the midterm, we do British culture. Sorry, I got it backwards. See, I'm not going to delete this. British culture is the first 8 weeks, pretty much exclusively, because America doesn't exist yet. So we do British culture, 2 quizzes and an assignment, and then we do midterm. And then after that, it's 80 to 90% American culture until the exam. And then 2 quizzes and 2 assignments, 2 quizzes and 1 assignment afterwards too. So it's split evenly. I'll get my marker to sort this out if I have it. If I have it around. It'll have to be blue. So there's, before the midterm, when you get to the midterm, there's 1 quiz, just to make it clear before somebody asks me. And then there's going to be, it's balanced. It's balanced, okay? So there's 2 quizzes and an assignment before the midterm, and then 2 quizzes and an assignment, and then the final. So all of your you won't have any grades until you do the first quiz, and from there it's completely sort of symmetrical. 2 quizzes, assignment, exam. 2 quizzes, assignment, exam, and that's how the class is evaluated. That's 90% of your grade, plus the participation, which, like I said, if you show up on time, you don't miss any quizzes or anything else, there's no reason that you can't get 10% perfect out of that, okay? Now, right at the beginning of Friday's class, somebody was asking me, or am I going to review what I do in the Wednesday lecture? No, I'm not. The Wednesday lecture is going to be additional content. But however, because not all the students attended on Friday, and now you're watching this, I would like you to read the introduction yourself, the whole thing, which means it's something like 20 pages, okay? And this is not because I'm going to ask you questions about it. This is just for fun. I don't know, maybe you don't think it's fun, but this is just background information, okay? This is not going to be on the first quiz, but the introduction is there just to talk to you about ideas of what does it mean to be British, what does it mean to be American, how is your identity connected to your culture and your country or your city or your area. How do you represent, or how do you feel like you represent your country or your culture, right? Sometimes I feel extremely Canadian in certain situations. Certainly when I put on my hockey skates and my helmet and my equipment and I skate around with a bunch of Koreans at Namsan Gongwon, I suddenly feel like I'm 100% Canadian. But there's times when I walk around and I speak Hangul and I'm eating samgyeopsal with my family and my wife is Korean and my kids are half Korean and everybody's speaking Korean all around me, that I feel very comfortable. I feel like, you know, my identity is a split identity. This is my home. I feel like I don't feel completely Korean, but I feel like Korea is my second home, and so my identity includes that aspect of, I've lived here for a long time. I've worked at a university. Most of my friends in Korea are Korean, and the people I work with are Korean, and I drive a Korean car. So, you know, when you're immersed in a culture, you end up, I'm still representative of Canada. When everybody talks to me and say, where are you from? I always answer that I'm from Canada, but like, where do you live? I live in Korea. So these are questions that are important. British and American culture, they are people that have, you know, spread all over the world in different ways, right? I've come here legally. I have a visa. I've gotten married. I'm not a criminal or anything, but there are many reasons, and there are many ideas connected to the movement of people and the ideas that people have about different cultures. And that's why, you know, as a Canadian, I think it's good for me to teach the class to you, because none of you are American. So all of us look at America from the outside, right? I probably know America better than you just because my culture is most similar, and I've been there many times. But it's a good thing to have perspective on how you represent a group. I always feel like sometimes if I do something embarrassing, or I do something wrong, or I get angry at somebody and I yell at some Korean, you know, let's say I get an argument with an ajumma or a halmoni or something about the price of something, and I'm yelling and everybody's looking at me. And I'm representing Waegugin, or I'm representing Migugin or Canadian, right? That's just a reality. That's how it is. So we have to look at how representations are. These are things that people try to control, right? And sometimes accidentally you misrepresent. And if you've only seen one Canadian and that Canadian was, you know, very rude and behaved very badly, then it's going to affect your impression. But beyond that, your identity is tied largely to many of these concepts, right? If I move my board or I move myself, as we go through the class, these aren't things that are necessarily going to be multiple choice, you know, questions. So don't get scared or anything. But imperialism, definitely we're going to talk about. Racism, definitely we're going to talk about. Religion, yes. These ones in particular, not so much region. These three here are going to come up, and we're going to talk about them in detail because they're significant factors in the cultural change of both British and American culture. But we do have to talk about these other things too. Like, what is nationalism, and is it a good thing or a bad thing? What is regionalism as opposed to nationalism, and what is internationalism? These are ideas, they're social concepts, they're philosophical concepts. We call them the isms. Most university students don't like talking about the isms, but we'll keep it simple. In the book, I break it down, and I'm going to explain to you, I think we all know the negative side of many of these things, but we have to be critical. We have to use critical thinking as we go through these things. So although sometimes it may seem like we're starting at the beginning, the introduction talks about various things, about components of culture like art and history and clothing and food. These are all part of culture. Everything is. Buildings, okay? Read it over, and then we'll briefly go over this lecture. And if anybody has any questions, we'll deal with them. And then on Friday, we'll dive into chapter 1, and that will be chapter 1 will comprise the first 1,000 years of recorded history. We'll talk about ancient Britain before the Romans came, and what kind of people and what kind of culture there was. And then we'll talk about the Roman invasion and all the other people that followed them, and how the blending, conquering, blending, immigrating movement of all these different peoples after hundreds and hundreds of years eventually produced something called Great Britain, and after 1,000 years, something that we can identify as British culture. Okay, so we're going to talk about how things all came together. There's linguistic elements, there's political elements, there's social elements. There's lots of things to talk about. You don't have to memorize everybody's name. You don't have to memorize all the dates, but you have to have a sense of how each conflict and each crisis from the Romans until I told you the magic number 1066, from Julius Caesar's first landing on the British Isles to William the Conqueror invading England, how the people and the culture transformed and ended up eventually evolving into a British culture that we can recognize today. And the American culture is much less, it's not nearly as old, but it's certainly as complicated, and there's a lot of British influence. So once you understand where all the British cultural influences came from, you can see the colonial era, the colonist, the American War of Independence and the Civil War. You can see how America was turned into sort of the next generation, sort of a larger extension of what the English were in Shakespeare's era, right? So we'll talk about all these things. I think they're interesting. I hope I can entertain you and inform you and give you some important analytical skills. Please, if you don't finish reading the introduction by Friday, that's no problem. Just make sure you read it over by next week, right? And it's like I said, that's not for quiz, answering questions on the quiz or memorizing. It's just to help you sort of give you a little bit of background about what the purpose of this class is and how we're going to approach it from a cultural theory perspective. Okay? So that'll be it for today. Thank you for listening and tuning in. I know it's going to be posted probably late by Thursday night. I'll still give you a week. Don't worry. And this really doesn't need to be watched before Friday, so don't overreact. In the following weeks, the video will be posted earlier. Okay? So thank you for tuning in, and hopefully this works properly. This is also the first lecture, so we have to make sure, we have to do a test and see if everything's working properly. So when you see this on the Cyber Campus, watch the video, and you'll have until next Thursday to watch it. Okay? Take care. Have a good weekend.